This is Power Hour with Gabriella Power.
Hello and welcome to Power Hour. I'm Gabriella Power. Thank you for your company. We have a massive show coming up today, but we have to start with Biden's White House press secretary, Karine Jean-Pierre. My goodness, the woman who spent years lying to the American people, completely complicit in the big operation attempting to cover up Biden's decline, now claims that she doesn't want to be a Democrat. She's suddenly an independent and is coming out with a tell-all book, Independent, a look inside a broken White House, outside the party lines. I'm not sure who is going to be forking out for this, but let's just take a quick look back on the role she played as White House press secretary. The gaslighting was on another level.
He is as sharp as ever, as I have known him to be in my engagement, in my experience with him.
Oh, how many times have we told that? And remember when she tried to pretend the videos of Biden looking increasingly terrible were cheap fakes and disinformation?
There seems to be a sort of rash of videos that have been edited to make the president appear especially frail or mentally confused. I'm wondering if the White House is especially worried about the fact that this appears to be a pattern that we're seeing more often.
Yeah, and I think you all have called this the cheap fakes video, and that's exactly what they are. They are cheap fakes video. They are done in bad faith, and some of your news organization have been very clear, have stressed that these the right-wing critics of the president have a credibility problem because of the fact checkers have repeatedly caught them pushing misinformation, disinformation.
And she still pretends that she wasn't part of one of the biggest political scandals of all time, the Biden cover-up. But just like Jake Tapper, who was also part of that cover-up and is still pretending that he wasn't really and is now profiting from that, Karine Jean-Pierre has found herself a book deal where this time she'll apparently be telling you the truth.
And this is my answer. And what I mean by that is, in an era of misinformation, disinformation, the regressiveness of social policy, what we're seeing currently right now, what I have decided to do, and I really have thought long and hard about this, is to follow my own compass.
And the PR around this is such a joke. Hatchet Book Group said in a press release, Jean-Pierre didn't come to her decision to be an independent lightly. She takes us through the 3 weeks that led to Biden's abandoning his bid for a second term and the betrayal by the Democratic Party that led to his decision. In a hard-hitting yet hopeful critique, Jean-Pierre defines what it means to be part of the growing percentage of our fractured electorate that is independent, why it can be worthwhile to carve a political space more loyal to personal beliefs than a party affiliation, and what questions you need to ask yourself to determine where you fit politically. I mean, come on. Karine Jean-Pierre has no credibility. She's likely going to be getting the knives out. She might name some names in this book and then make a few dollars. But isn't it interesting that after working for Obama and Biden, she's now urging Americans to essentially follow her and abandon the Democrat Party? Now, we will return back to this story with my guest Adam Crichton in just a moment. But first, it's time for Media Meltdowns. Well, she's back. Fired MSNBC host Joy Reid is speaking out about why the left-wing network dumped her earlier this year. Joy Reid told Katie Couric that it had nothing to do with her failing ratings and even worse content, but she raised concerns that it may have had something to do with her race and her anxiety around Donald Trump.
There is a lot of anxiety, both there and I think in every media. We're seeing it at CBS. We're seeing it at ABC, where allegedly the View hosts were told not to go so hard on Trump, where there's a push for people to, hey, do less Trump, do more entertainment, don't be hard on him.
Yeah, I read that.
Litigious. There's a fear of him. So I think there's, and obviously
But Joy, let's be honest, you were no different than Nicole or Rachel Maddow.
Well, only in one way was I different. I'm a black woman doing the thing. You know what I mean? And so I'm not different, but I'm different because
I was just talking in terms of your criticizing of Trump.
100%.
Yeah.
And Joy Reid did not stop there. She was just getting started, claiming that Donald Trump can't handle criticism coming from her because she's a black woman?
I think that there's a difference for Trump in hearing the kinds of criticisms specifically out of a black woman. It bothers him in a way it doesn't bother him like anything else. He's got this sort of tick about race, and about sort of criticism coming specifically from a black woman, because we've seen him lay out and dish out real abuse against black women journalists. So I think and also I did a specific thing, which was I tried to constantly unpack the racial history of the country, which is very much against the sort of Project 2025 thing. And it's something I can do in a certain capacity because of my background.
After the election where she told Americans that Kamala Harris's campaign was flawless, her show, The Reid, shed nearly 50% of its total audience. And you look back at her work on MSNBC and you wonder why that is.
We've laid out the stakes in this crucial election, where one side stands for freedom while the other meets the textbook definition of fascism, namely a far-right dictatorial regime like Hitler's Germany or Franco's Spain or Mussolini's Italy, but also white-ruled South Africa before Mandela and the black majority took control, or Vladimir Putin's Russia, Viktor Orban's Hungary, or Nicolas Maduro in Venezuela today.
How weird that calling your political opponents Nazis repeatedly just didn't really work out for her. And it might have even helped Trump win the election because her commentary was so disgusting and came at a time where more and more people were waking up to the BS that the mainstream media were absolutely pushing. So good riddance to Joy Reid. Well done to MSNBC for getting rid of her earlier this year. But sadly, MSNBC's coverage is still pretty awful. Its hosts are still suffering from severe TDS, and its new lineup is failing. Its ratings have dropped 41% in prime time since Jen Psaki took over full-time hosting. And what about over at CNN? Is that where the audience is going? Apparently not. According to Nielsen Media Research data, CNN finished with its worst week of the year. Joining us now is Chief Economist at the Institute of Public Affairs, Adam Crichton. Adam, great to see you, and we have to talk about Karine Jean-Pierre in a moment. But first, someone who's somehow even worse, in my opinion, ex-MSNBC host Joy Reid. She's now speculating that she may have been fired because of her race and because of her anxiety around Donald Trump. Doesn't really surprise me hearing that type of commentary coming from her. But what's your reaction to this?
Well, look, I spent a few years watching cable news in the US, and Joy Reid was the most hysterical, far-left, race-baiting broadcaster that I'd ever seen. It's actually shocking by Australian standards, and her ratings were tanking. The notion that she was sacked for her race is just absurd. She constantly lost her slot. She was paid millions of dollars a year, so she clearly wasn't worth it, and she's furious. Her style of politics, her style of rhetoric clearly didn't work. But she was ranting away for years, and then there was a huge swing to Trump from black Americans, from Hispanic Americans. So, I think the network was embarrassed and they got rid of her. That's the reason. Nothing to do with race.
Absolutely, well said. But it's interesting because getting rid of her on MSNBC, it actually hasn't even helped their ratings. They're tanking, so are CNN's at the moment. And I don't really see a way that they can get their audience back when so many Americans have just seen them for what they are. Many of them view their hosts as just Democrat mouthpieces. What does the future hold for MSNBC and CNN?
Yeah, well, look, certainly MSNBC was just the propaganda arm of the Democrat Party. You're quite right. People criticise Fox News for being right-wing, but they often have alternative voices on Fox News, and it's a ratings powerhouse. They constantly win their slots. Sometimes their ratings are higher than CNN and MSNBC put together. So it's a crisis for those other two networks. But as I said, they're ranting and raving against Trump. They had massive TDS. And it didn't work. So I think there's a lot of embarrassment. And I think the audience is embarrassed too, because they were lapping all of this up, thinking that that Biden was going to win, that Harris was going to win. And, she was thrashed. So, I think they've switched off just out of embarrassment, partly. I think they're going to have to become more centrist, those networks, and try to compete with Fox, which, despite all the rhetoric against it, I think is pretty middle ground, pretty centrist.
Absolutely. No, I agree with you. Adam, we have to speak about Karine Jean-Pierre. She's now released a tell-all book, Independent, a look inside a broken White House outside the party lines. This is what she said earlier in the year, claiming that she wasn't really part of Biden's cover-up and there was a disconnect between her and the party.
There was a disconnect for me. What was happening with leadership in the Democratic Party and how it was truly, as my former colleague, communications director Ben LeBolt said, it was a firing squad, and I had never seen anything like it before.
So what are we going to hear from this book? Do you suspect that she's going to, I suppose, get the knives out, maybe name a few people that she's fallen out with?
Well, look, I certainly won't be buying it, but she'll probably refer to herself as an historic figure, which she did once in a newspaper article in the US, which was somewhat hilarious. Look, she was the worst press secretary the US has ever had, really, for the president. No question. She was the ultimate diversity hire, I'm sorry to say. Jen Psaki was way, way better. I don't think that KJP, as she's called, will even get a TV show because she's just not very talented. Look, they're all saying this now. Jake Tapper, KJP, they're all saying, oh, you know, we knew what was going on, but they never said anything at the time. I think they're just trying to save their future careers by making these sorts of statements.
And making money from it. Now they do a tell-all when it doesn't matter, when it's too late, and they're profiting from it. But what does it say about the Democrat Party when you have someone who was kind of the face of it, who is now encouraging people to essentially walk away and look at being independent?
Well, look, I don't know if people will. I mean, as you know, the US is so incredibly polarised, but the Democrat Party is facing an existential crisis. I mean, it used to thrive by pandering to minorities, but as I just said earlier, there was a swing to Trump from all those minorities. So this sort of coalition strategy that they've used for years, it's just not working anymore, and so they're fumbling around with what to believe in. So, you know, KJP probably is frustrated with the party because it's probably going to be out of power, at least in the White House, for quite some time.
Now, we've been talking about, obviously, the Biden cover-up, and Donald Trump says that the biggest scandal is also the use of Biden's auto pen and using the auto pen for some of those pardons. Now, Trump has ordered Attorney General Pam Bondi to investigate the use of Biden's auto pen. The White House has put out a statement today saying that the nation is governed through presidential signatures. In recent months, it has become increasingly apparent that former President Biden's aides abused the power of presidential signatures through the use of an auto pen to conceal Biden's cognitive decline and assert Article 2 authority. This conspiracy marks one of the most dangerous and concerning scandals in American history. And this is not going away anytime soon. But what can really happen here, Adam?
Well, look, I think that's broadly true. I mean, the presidential pardon power is an extremely serious matter. So you would think the president would actually physically sign these documents, but that clearly did not happen with the suite of pardons that happened at the end of Biden's presidency. I mean, of course, the famous one being Anthony Fauci, who was pardoned, for anything going back 10 years. And there were many other pardons too. And I mean, as you point out, it was exactly the same signature on all of these pardons, suggesting that Biden did not even know that he was pardoning these people. So I think there does have to be an inquiry to work out who on earth was actually governing the US, especially in those last years of the Biden presidency, when it was clear for all to see, for the American public to see, that he was in marked decline. I mean, he could barely string a sentence together. And, people like KJP, who we just talked about, were saying at the time that everything was fine. So, it is a serious matter, and I think that Trump's right to order an investigation of that.
Caroline Levitt was asked about the auto pen scandal yesterday. Here's the exchange.
Looks different. It looks authentic. In fact, if you look at the last name, it almost looks like the president was having a hard time spelling his last name there. Is this White House of the opinion that the only pardon that would count is one that the president signed himself?
It's very interesting. Very interesting props. If you want to bring them to my office later so I can take a closer look, I would like to do that. The president is making a good point when he discusses the usage of the auto pen. Who was running the country for the past 4 years?
Yeah, it's an interesting question because it's strange that Hunter Biden's pardon, the person who was never supposed to get a pardon at all, appears to be one of the only ones that actually has Biden's handwritten signature.
Yeah. No, that's right. And look, I'm sure that was the president's decision himself, despite the fact, as you point out, the president said many times, the former president, I should say, said many times that he would not pardon his son, but he did. That was probably the only one that he was aware of. But yeah, look, it is, it's very sad actually, because if you take a step back now, there have been so many pardons. This precedent has been set now, I think, that you'll see at the end of every presidency, there's going to be, 24 pardons of people, and that's not really what it was set up for.
Absolutely not. It's extraordinary use of power and, preemptive pardons. Biden, that is part of his legacy. I want to talk to you about DOGE. President Trump has officially sent the first $9 billion DOGE rescissions package to Congress. So this is to gut funding for USAID, PBS, NPR, US Institute for Peace and other foreign aid programs. But $9 billion, it's no wonder that Elon Musk is pretty disappointed at the moment. It's not a lot of money in the grand scheme of things.
No, look, it's absolutely not. I mean, the US revenue every year is something like 5 trillion. Spending is 7 trillion, revenue is 5 trillion. There's an enormous deficit of roughly $2 trillion every single year. And so $9 billion in the US context is absolutely nothing. And so I sympathise with Elon Musk. He spent months of his time. He sacrificed a lot financially himself to help the US government make savings. And now there's this bill before Congress, which he said is pathetic, essentially, which just increases the debt further. And so there's this token other bill you've pointed out, $9 billion. That's a bit of a joke, really. So, I think we're seeing the beginnings of the fraying of the Trump-Musk relationship, I think, for sure.
Interesting to watch this space. I agree with you that it is disappointing when they were identifying so much waste and then we're down to $9 billion. But finally, Adam, I want to speak to you about what is happening here in Australia. And that is federal spending on climate and net zero policy has surged to $9 billion a year. So a decade ago, it was $600 million. Now it's $9 billion, and who knows what that will get to. But what value are we getting for this money?
Well, look, just firstly, $9 billion in the Australian context is a lot of money.
Yes, it is.
It basically would be, it would be the 20th largest program of the federal government. So I looked at federal spending on climate change and net zero, and I was just shocked that over 10 years, it's increased 15-fold and about 400% just in the last few years since Labor was elected. So this is serious money. And, you ask about value. Well, there isn't much because emissions are actually going up. They've barely fallen. Of course, power prices are going up, as you know. So we've got power prices going up and the government is asking taxpayers for $9 billion a year on, renewable this, renewable that. It's a disaster, really. It's a fiscal disaster. And so when the government says, for instance, we can't afford to spend more on defence, well, just remember that they're spending $9 billion a year on all sorts of boondoggles for so-called climate change. So, it's a huge waste.
Adam Crichton, Chief Economist at the Institute of Public Affairs, thank you so much for your time.
Thanks very much.
Joining us now from New Orleans is broadcaster and commentator Jeff Crouere. Jeff, thank you for joining us. Look, in breaking news, just as we record this, Donald Trump has signed a sweeping order blocking travel to the US from nearly 20 countries identified as high risk for terrorism, visa abuse and failure to share security information. Now, the new travel restrictions apply to nationals from countries including Afghanistan, Iran, Somalia, Libya and Yemen, all deemed very high risk due to terrorist activity, weak or hostile governments, and high visa overstay rates. Now, this, of course, comes after the horrific Colorado terror attack, where Egyptian national Mohammed Solomon, who entered the United States during the Biden administration and then overstayed his visa, is, of course, accused of setting multiple people on fire at a pro-Israel demonstration, including an elderly Holocaust survivor, in a clear anti-Semitic terror attack, and he was allegedly shouting "Free Palestine." Can I get your reaction to Donald Trump's decision today, this major move blocking travel to the United States?
Well, it goes along with his first term. Remember, in his first term, this was one of the first things that he did, and it created a firestorm of controversy. So I was waiting for when this would happen in the second term, and now it has. And of course, there are 20 nations with very spotty records as far as their own criminal justice system. That people that have come here from those countries have committed acts of terror. My radio station is just a few blocks away from where we had a terror attack here in New Orleans on New Year's Day. That was a person inspired by ISIS. Of course, the one in Boulder you just referenced was an Egyptian national who overstayed his visa. And that's the problem. We've got a lot of people here in this country that are here illegally and that want to do harm to Americans. So I think the president's wise to act. He's got the strong support of the American people to do this. It's the area that I think he's been most successful in his second term, and that is border security and dealing with this illegal immigration problem.
Yeah, absolutely. And there is an update on the family of Mohammed Salman, the Egyptian national who is the key suspect in the Colorado terror attack. Now, his family members were also facing deportation due to visa violations, but a Biden administration appointed federal judge in Colorado has now halted the deportation of his wife and 5 children. Now, Republicans are slamming Democrats for putting illegals ahead of Americans. What's your reaction to this?
Oh, I mean, I would agree. I mean, this has been going on now ever since Donald Trump started his second term. I mean, everything he does, they're taking to court, they're finding sympathetic judges, and they're trying to halt what the president's policies are. We, the people of the United States, over 77 million people voted for Donald Trump and his policies. Democrats are trying to go through judges, sympathetic judges, to stop the president from implementing what he campaigned on, what the voters said they wanted. Joe Biden, when he was president, was able to get more judges confirmed than Donald Trump. So there are a lot of Biden judges out there, a lot of very sympathetic judges to these Democrats filing lawsuits. So they're going to find judges. They'll go venue shopping. They'll find judges to stop different pieces of the Trump agenda. And a lot of it will have to be decided by the Supreme Court.
Jeff, I want to speak to you about the big, beautiful bill. Elon Musk has lashed out at Trump's big, beautiful bill, calling it a disgusting abomination. He wrote on X, "I'm sorry, but I just can't stand it anymore. This massive, outrageous, pork-filled congressional spending bill is a disgusting abomination. Shame on those who voted for it. You know you did wrong. You know it." Now, looking at the bill, we know that it makes some tax cuts permanent. It allocates spending for the wall, for border security, and cuts some Medicaid benefits. Now, Musk's concern is that it's estimated the bill would add approximately $2.4 trillion to the national debt over the next decade. You know, hearing these concerns, I think some people agree with what Musk is pointing out. Then others also see that Trump needs to get this through. What influence does Musk have at this point, and what are your thoughts about it?
Well, I just want to commend Elon Musk for everything he did for our country, serving in a volunteer capacity as head of DOGE, really putting his businesses at risk. You know, he had all these attacks on Tesla dealerships, Tesla owners. So he did all of this for the American people, and he went through all of this. They identified $170 billion in cuts, and he didn't see any of it in this big, beautiful bill. Now, they've come forward with an anemic $9.3 billion rescission bill that is just a joke, just the small fraction of what they've identified. So I think he's raising legitimate concerns. I think a lot of people that are fiscal hawks, fiscal conservatives, think that this bill should have had a lot more spending cuts. Our budget deficit right now is knocking on the door of $37 trillion. We've added about $800 billion since Donald Trump became president just 4.5 months ago. So it's literally out of control.
There's a lot of speculation around the relationship between Elon Musk and Donald Trump. It's interesting that Trump has not fired back at Elon, which, you know, typically we might see him do that. He's certainly done that in the past with others, suggesting that maybe he still also has a lot of respect for Elon Musk and the work that he has done for DOGE. We know that White House Press Secretary Karoline Leavitt was asked about how Trump would likely respond to Elon's message. This is what she had to say.
Look, the president already knows where Elon Musk stood on this bill. It doesn't change the president's opinion. This is one big, beautiful bill, and he's sticking to it.
It's interesting. What do you make of the White House's response here? Are you expecting to hear something a bit fiery from Donald Trump in the future, or do you think that they'll be able to continue this bromance after this?
Well, I hope they are, because I really think Elon Musk adds a tremendous amount to the Trump administration. So I hope they're going to be able to continue their relationship. I think President Trump legitimately wants to get this bill through because he wants his tax cuts extended. And this was the best bill he felt he could get through a Republican Congress where they've got a super slim majority. Elon Musk has other motivations. He wants more cuts. And I think we understand where they're both coming from. And I think the president understands that Elon Musk sacrificed a tremendous amount. I don't think he's going to criticize him like he would others. I think he has a debt of gratitude toward Elon Musk. In fact, today he called him a genius. So instead of criticizing him, he praised him. So I hope their relationship continues. I think it's very beneficial to the Trump administration.
I want to ask you about the Democrats. We've seen plenty of bizarre behaviour from Democrats in more recent times, I should say. But this latest stunt by Congressman Eric Swalwell has certainly backfired. Look at this video.
Hey, Congressman.
Trying to help you?
What the is up with Trump always chickening out on tariffs?
Anything else?
Nope, that's it.
Is this supposed to help the Democrat Party? I mean, it is so cringe.
It is. It is. I mean, Eric Swalwell is a joke. I mean, come on. He had a relationship with a Chinese spy. I mean, the guy came in last place when he ran for president. He says he learns about Republican members of Congress at the gym. He talks to them over lifting weights. I don't think anybody believes that. And this stunt, of course, the taco stands for Trump always chickening out, which is a ridiculous claim, because what he does is he set these tariff levels. These countries then want to negotiate a better deal. He relaxes them because he gets a better deal for the country. So it's called negotiating. It's called the art of the deal. It's what he's been doing his entire life as a businessman, as a politician. So he's not chickening out. He's just negotiating. And Eric Swalwell, I mean, let him keep doing what he's doing. It's not going to help the Democrats.
Yes, please keep going. It's just so embarrassing. But as you say, it's out of the deal, and the Democrats can't get their message straight or right, really, either that Trump is chickening out or he's a dictator. I mean, which one is it? But we've also heard from Hakeem Jeffries. He claims that Donald Trump is trying to destroy America.
But Republicans are aggressively trying to destroy America as we know it and end the American way of life. That's what this Donald Trump effort has been all about, which, by the way, the American people are rejecting.
End the American way of life. I mean, another joke, really.
You know, they engage in hyperbole all the time. I mean, it's the country's at risk, democracy's at risk, Donald Trump's a dictator. And it didn't work. I mean, they tried that in the campaign. The American people rejected it. All they have is bash Donald Trump, is Trump derangement syndrome. All they do is go after Donald Trump. They offer nothing of substance for the American people. No policies are going to help the American people. It's just bash Trump. I have no doubt if they somehow get control of Congress again after the midterm election, they'll impeach Donald Trump again. I mean, that's what they do. So it's just par for the course for these crazed Democrats. And I would hope the American people aren't buying the nonsense.
Broadcaster and commentator Jeff Cruer, thank you so much for your time. Great to talk to you.
Thanks for having me.
Joining us now from Beverly Hills in California is the woman known worldwide as America's psychiatrist, Dr. Carol Lieberman. Thank you so much for joining us. Now, you've served as a psychiatric expert witness in many celebrity trials, and probably the biggest case that's rocking Hollywood at the moment is, of course, the Diddy case. This is Sean Diddy Combs' federal racketeering, conspiracy and sex trafficking trial. And some of the evidence and the details that have emerged from this trial have been so disturbing. In the latest development, Diddy's ex-girlfriend, Cassie Ventura's friend, Brianna Bongolan, testified that Diddy dangled her from a balcony. She alleged that he held her on the top of the balcony's rail for around 10 to 15 seconds before pulling her down and throwing her onto the balcony's furniture. Sean Diddy Combs has denied all of the charges against him, which is, of course, worth pointing out. But can you bring us up to speed on the latest to come out of the trial?
Yes. Each day is more shocking than the next. I think when the jurors go home, they take a shower to get, they want to get away from all of the, very sexual and just, not just sex, but all the violence, all the, the video, of course, is the cornerstone, the video of his beating up Cassie Ventura. That's been the cornerstone of the case. But there have been lots of, all the testimony of various witnesses have been shocking. The bombing of a Porsche, of Kid Cudi, all kinds of things. What I think is the most interesting part of it, and this hasn't really been brought up in testimony per se, is the fact that a lot of this is due to Diddy's mother. When Diddy was growing up, first of all, his father was killed when he was 3 years old. So he grew up with his mother and his grandmother. And his mother had these parties, that really they were precursors to the freak-offs that he has now, or that he had. She had parties with drugs and alcohol and pimps and prostitutes and, basically the same kinds of things, although not as at the grand scale that P. Diddy had it. And so because of all that, she desensitized him. Obviously that was very traumatic to a little boy growing up, having weekend parties like this all the time. That skewed his view of sex. It desensitized him. And that really is at the root of what happened afterwards. As he got to be more famous and richer and all that, he was able to do these kinds of parties at a grand scale. So that has not come up. His mother has attended the court pretty much every day. And at the beginning, she was wearing these low-cut outfits, and somebody must have said something to her, because now she's wearing things that are a little more proper, But so that's, as a psychiatrist, that's one of the things that interests me. Some of his friends have been telling him that because it's been going so badly, the trial has been going so badly for him so far, it's not looking good. Some of his friends have said that he should testify and throw himself on the mercy of the court and, try to explain why he did what he did and so on. Now that, as an expert witness, I can tell you that there's two sides to that. One, if at the end his attorneys say that things are, I don't know if they admit it, but if things are looking so bad that is sort of a Hail Mary, the only kind of way out, then maybe he should do it. But the risk to that is that for all defendants is that the prosecution, if they have, once they're on the stand, once the defendant is on the stand, the prosecution can really just go at them, and it could end up being worse.
It's interesting. It's interesting you bring up his mother. It provides a little bit of context to Diddy's background and what he grew up with. But so much has been coming out of this trial, as you say. Just earlier in the week, the trial descended into chaos. There was a ranting member of the public that had to be removed from court. And that video that you talked about, a security guard testified that he had to destroy CCTV of Diddy assaulting his ex-girlfriend, Cassie. And he was paid around $100,000, with Diddy telling him not to make any big purchases with that windfall. It's some really dark stuff.
Yes, he was trying to totally hide it. Like if this guard could certainly suddenly buy something super expensive, it would make people curious. Where'd you get the money? And also, of course, he was made to sign a non-disclosure agreement, but presumably he's under subpoena. and was made to testify, but he does have immunity, so that he can't get himself in trouble by admitting that he took money to destroy it and or to give Diddy the tape.
Let's talk about the Blake Lively versus Justin Baldoni case. This week it was revealed that Blake Lively dropped two major claims against her co-star. She dropped the claim that Baldoni caused her emotional distress after he demanded proof. Look, from what I can gather, it's not looking great for either of them, but particularly Blake Lively. Can you bring us up to speed on this case?
Yes, I think Blake Lively, at this point, is sorry that she ever started the whole thing. First of all, that is a typical, it's surprising that her attorneys didn't let her know from the very beginning. This is just a common thing, and certainly as a psychiatric expert witness, I encounter this all the time. If one of your claims is emotional distress, then you have to show proof of that. And the way that typically happens is that the person is then examined by a psychiatrist on their side, and on the defense side, it would be on his side, but also there is a request for production from both sides before the actual trial, and so part of what is requested is records. If you're claiming emotional stress, the defense has to make sure that you don't have these emotional problems before the incident that you're claiming emotional distress from. So seemed like it was this big surprise to her, and she didn't want the public, obviously, to see what her mental health records were. But it's a surprise that that they wouldn't have made that clear to her from the beginning when she filed this suit. But the thing is that she filed this suit in such a kind of an emotional upheaval. She wasn't really thinking logically about all these kinds of details. Perhaps her attorneys did tell her this and she just didn't hear it. But, she's claiming that Baldoni was sexually harassing her. Now, if I've watched the videos of the scenes of this one particular scene where they're dancing together, and I watched the whole movie. It's a really good movie. But there's this one scene in particular that she seemed to have a problem with, where they were dancing closely, and he was talking to her. Now, she said that he was saying certain things that, in fact, there actually is a copy of what he was really saying. Music was going on, and so she thought that the actual words wouldn't be heard. It wasn't heard in the movie, but I mean, right. the case, they were able to get the whole, the full file of it. So anyhow, what I think happened was that she was trying to say that he came on to her in this movie. Now, he's married, not that married men don't come on to women, but he seems happily married. And really what I think happened is that she got into her character tremendously, like good actors are supposed to do. And I think she was starting to fall for him. And she was very uncomfortable with that possibility because, of course, she's married, and that made her all very uncomfortable. And so at the end, she just decided to blame him for sexual harassment rather than facing and acknowledging her own feelings. I mean, one of the things that I do is besides being an expert witness, I work with movies and television shows as a psychiatric consultant. So I've been on sets where there are sex scenes or romantic scenes, all kinds of scenes. And so I know, I'm looking at that and from that eye, and I think she's just way out of line, and this thing has just taken on a life of its own. And now, things are not looking good for her. And I wonder if her husband, how much longer he's going to stay supporting her, because this has just really blown up.
Well, he's kind of been dragged into it, and so is her former BFF Taylor Swift, and she's reportedly done with Blake Lively. As you've kind of highlighted, there have been several mistakes on Blake Lively's part, but now there are reports that Taylor Swift refuses to speak to her. She's apparently ignoring all calls, texts and emails from Blake Lively. Do you know what's going on here?
Yes, that's because Blake Lively, in her desperation, she's been trying to get people on her side to talk for her, to help her case, to testify. And apparently, or the reports are, that she threatened Taylor Swift that if she didn't help her, didn't testify, didn't say whatever it is that she wanted her to say, that she would expose texts between Taylor Swift and her boyfriend. Very personal kinds of texts.
Wow.
The texts are between Taylor Swift and Blake Lively, but I mean comments that she was making about her boyfriend, and just personal comments. Now that's not what friends do.
Absolutely not. Look, we have to go in just a moment, but I want to get your thoughts on this. Game of Thrones actor Liam Cunningham is joining activist Greta Thunberg in this stunt to break the siege in Gaza. They're among 12 activists sailing to Gaza. Look at this.
Okay, hi, I'm Liam. Yasmin, Tiago. If you look in the background, there's a beautiful boat. These beautiful people are going to be going to break the siege in Gaza. These are our coordinators, and if I may use it, they won't use the word our heroes.
What do you make of this? Another Hollywood celebrity appearing to kind of sympathise with Hamas terrorists. How will this turn out for them?
It is really Greta Thunberg should stick to climate change. Because, not that I'm encouraging that, mind you, but this is just, she always has to be in the public eye, and she hasn't been for a while. So she's jumping on this, but it shows for all of them, really, it shows such ignorance of what is going on in the Middle East. And as if, what they're doing is going to help somehow. Now, first of all, she's bringing a token aid, so it's not clear, like, what is it, a bag of potato chips or something? In other words, it's not any significant food or other kind of aid. And plus, it's just believing the Hamas story that they are starving, and that that Israel is responsible, which is not true. It's really Hamas who steals whatever food is in. So all in all, and it could really blow up the war, not just Hamas and Israel, but even getting the United States into it.
We have to leave it there. We're just out of time. But America's psychiatrist, Dr. Carol Lieberman, thank you so much for your time. Really appreciate it.
My pleasure. Thank you.
Meghan Markle is set to be honoured for her work championing women and undeserved communities at a major gala event in LA. Riley Sullivan is a lifestyle reporter here at skynews.com.au, and he's always across the latest celebrity and royal headlines. Riley, great to see you.
Great to be back.
So tell us about this Meghan Markle update. She's going to be honoured for her work championing women and undeserved communities at the prestigious Natural History Museum of Los Angeles Gala later this month. What's the story behind the decision to give this award to Meghan?
Yeah, well, it's kind of an interesting decision. As we know, I didn't really see an immediate link between the Natural History Museum of Los Angeles and Meghan Markle. It was sort of unclear the connection. I think that the award is ostensibly to honour her work supporting communities and women. I don't really see a connection here. I think, to be honest, I think Meghan Markle is someone who is a great mother. I think that she's, interested in her business ventures. I don't really think philanthropy has really been at the forefront for her, especially recently. The only thing I can think of in recent times was, of course, during the horrible Los Angeles wildfires. I think her and Harry really sort of stepped up. They volunteered. I know they donated some money. So I think, in terms of the Los Angeles area, that's the only real link I can make. But I do think it's probably more an opportunity for Meghan to show up, to be honoured. I don't think it's a coincidence to say that this is also happening on the same day as Trooping the Colour. So It's almost like she's planned something, or she's agreed to go to this gala coinciding with the Trooping the Colour, because, as usual, Trooping the Colour is a big reminder that she's not involved in the royal family, that her and Harry are very much on the outs. So I think this is an opportunity for her to say, hey, yes, I'm living in Los Angeles, but I'm still sort of part of this prestigious philanthropic scene.
Yeah, it's an interesting point, isn't it? And also, Meghan's released a bonus episode of her Confessions of a Female Founder podcast where she interviewed Beyonce's mother, Tina Knowles. So what were the biggest takeaways from the chat? What can you tell us about it?
Yes, well, I listened to the whole 40-minute conversation. I was very curious to hear if Beyonce would come up. Of course, Tina Knowles is sort of the matriarch of the Knowles family as Beyonce and Solange's mother, and is a business person. She's had lots of different business ventures with her daughter, a hair care company. So I think that was sort of the link to Meghan's Confessions of a Female Founder podcast. But the conversation itself was pretty boring. There was a couple brief mentions of Beyonce, but realistically, it was a pretty boring conversation. I think the biggest takeaway from the interview actually had nothing to do with Tina Knowles. It was the revelation that Meghan said that she calls their mutual friend Tyler Perry, who is a big supporter of the Sussexes. She said that he is the person she calls for business advice. So all of these crazy business ventures, American Riviera Orchard, we love Meghan, all of these ventures, it's Tyler Perry allegedly pulling the strings.
Okay. Now, Freedom of Information requests have revealed that British taxpayers are on the hook for about $1.3 million in costs related to Prince Harry's failed legal battle with the Home Office. So will Harry be expected to pay or repay the costs?
Right, so the tally now it's over 1.3 million, as you said. That includes the legal action that Harry took out against the British Home Office over the stripped security. Of course, when Harry and Meghan left royal duties, they were no longer entitled to taxpayer-funded Met police officers. That was removed. Harry was very upset about that decision. He has cited that as the reason why he refuses to come back to the UK with his family. And this has really been an ongoing court battle for over 4 years. So he's lost it multiple times on appeals. It most recently went to the UK Court of Appeals last month, and he lost. So therefore, he will be expected to likely reimburse the Home Office and therefore the taxpayer this money. I think that's only fair. If he does repay the 1.3 million, on top of his own legal fees, it's estimated that he spent in the ballpark of about $5 million just on this legal battle. I mean, $5 million, he could have paid for security with that money. I think it's an insane decision. But, from the taxpayer's point of view, they will likely get that money repaid eventually. But it's not a good look. This is Harry. He's supposedly misses his homeland, misses his country, and he's still sort of holding up the court's time. It's the legal system, it's all of these public services that really have better things to do with their time than hear Harry's grievances in his, $20 million mansion. I think they're sick of it.
Yeah, absolutely. Very well said. Now, Royal Insider has claimed that Princesses Beatrice and Eugenie are secretly on standby to take on royal duties when William becomes king. Do we know anything else about, plans for his cousins?
Yes, so this is a story, we've talked about it many times over the years. There's been a lot of speculation about Beatrice and Eugenie. I've always firmly believed that they will eventually be called upon for royal duties. A couple reasons why. Firstly, when William becomes king, there is going to be not enough working royals, period.
Right.
There's only 11 at the moment, but out of those 11 people currently completing royal duties, 4 or 5 of them are very elderly. You've got, of course, King Charles and Queen Camilla, who are both in their mid-70s. Princess Anne's in her 70s. But even older than that, we have the Duke and Duchess of Gloucester, who are in their 80s now. The Duke of Kent, who's, I think, 89. So realistically, these are people that are not going to be part of William's time when he becomes king. He's going to need backup. I think that the logical choice, if you look down the line of succession, is to go straight to Beatrice. I think she's always had that sense. If you look at the way that she's structured her life and her family decisions, I think all of that really leads to her thinking, I might be called upon, and I do believe that she would do it for her cousin. I think Eugenie as well would be a possible contender because he's going to need the support. I think, of course, William and Kate have 3 children, but, Charlotte, Louis and George are decades away from being able to take on royal duties. So I do think I would, if I'm not a betting person, but I would put a bet on Beatrice, definitely Beatrice, and possibly Eugenie becoming.
Okay, putting our money on it.
Yeah.
Now, a man has been arrested after illegally trespassing on the grounds of Windsor Castle, not far from Kate and William's family home. So tell us about this. Could this latest incident spark kind of a royal security overhaul, do you think?
Look, I think that would definitely be a discussion. This is the second time now in the span of a year where publicly it's been known that people have trespassed onto the grounds of Windsor Castle. Of course, Kate and Will and their family live inside Adelaide Cottage, which is a regular family home within the sort of confines of Windsor Castle. That is very much their sanctuary. It's where they've chosen to raise their family. So, of course, you know, their security is paramount. This latest incident happened on Sunday. It was during the daytime. In the afternoon, a man in his 30s was arrested after breaching sort of the outer, I guess, perimeter of Windsor Castle. They stressed that it wasn't as serious as previous incident last year. There was another case where I think it was 2 men were able to sort of break in close to Adelaide Cottage. They got quite close. They were in the sort of outer building area. So this is a concern. I think that the security of the royal family, whether it's Prince Harry, you know, in the courtroom or not, is always a discussion, because at the end of the day, these are people who live their lives in the public eye.
Yeah.
They're essentially sitting ducks in the sense that we know where they are. You know, there's a royal diary. It's very much easy to track down royal family members. So of course their security is important, and I hope that, you know, this latest incident does certainly, I mean, spark an overhaul. Whether it changes the way that they run the security around Windsor Castle, unclear. But I do think incidents like this and the fact they've made it public shows that, you know, they are serious about prosecuting people as well.
Yeah. Riley Sullivan, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.
And that is Power Hour. Thank you for your company. We'll see you next week. Make sure you subscribe to Sky News Australia on YouTube.